Oh, that's the wrong one. Excuse me. I'm almost embarrassed to use the PowerPoint after what Pastor John said this morning. Okay, if you please close your eyes for the next 2 seconds, I run the whole thing backwards, and we start from the beginning. I hope that you can read that. Okay, it wasn't too bad. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. And this was really kind of touching to hear people greet each other with Shabbat Shalom. It really felt like home. So when you say Shabbat Shalom, we say Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. That means a blessed and peaceful Shabbat. That will be the full greeting. So when you say Shabbat Shalom, you were supposed to hear this respond, Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach. Topic today, or this afternoon, is about the settlements, communities in Judea, Samaria, Golan Heights, Gaza Strip. Every speaker in this conference is focusing on how serious are the times that we are living in. And I'm telling you, coming from the heart of, how shall I say, the focal point of what seems to be the problems, I'm telling you that from an Israeli perspective, my country was never so close to a civil war ever since the Second Temple was destroyed. For the first time ever, there are some real voices speaking about raising arms. Some people say that giving up land is not in the hands of any government, because it was never a government's property. It's God's land. He chose to give it to the Jewish people, and no government can make such decisions. And many people in my country would say that when the time, if such time will come, and Israeli forces will move into their communities to evacuate people, they should not just wait until something happens, they will resist. In my nightmares, everybody in my country can actually see that happen. You know why? Because it happened before. Jerusalem was destroyed in the course of the war over there. Jews fought against Jews. It was a civil war, and the outcomes were, well, the diaspora, which we did not recover from ever since. So we are in a crossroads in the country as well, and it sounds like, you know, like a dream, like a nightmare. It may well happen, because too many voices are serious about that, not just nobodies. We speak about rabbis instructing their students that when the time comes, they should not take orders from the government, they should resist by force. We speak about brother fighting against brother. So seriousness of times, indeed it is. Especially where we live at, simply because it's becoming to be a real issue. And you know what? These voices are no longer hidden. People speak out loudly. Even members of the parliament would say that the parliament cannot make decisions regarding the land. It's undermining the whole existence of the state of Israel as we know it today, as a democratic entity that's supposed to make rules based on majority in the parliament. That's how the system's supposed to work. So we are facing deeper troubles that it can see just by looking at the surface. Well, obviously, I don't need to recall you what the Bible says about the right for the land and who the land belongs to, but still, debating that, that's my topic today. And you'll be surprised to hear that for the average Israeli, the people who are willing to do whatever it takes not to give up land, it's not Jerusalem in the center. They're fighting for their homes. When you check with people, what do they think? Many people that will say, we are not leaving our homes in the territories or Judea, Samaria, it's our home. We live there. We can make compromises over things, but we won't leave our houses. Because what we are asking them to do, maybe under some solution in the near future, is to leave their homes and start all over again. And it happened once already, because we moved out of Sinai and we destroyed, we demolished all the property that we left behind, and people had to be resettled. It's a catastrophe that many elements in the Israeli society did not recover from yet. So to do the same thing again, and for what? For something that may work, may not work. So we speak about communities in Judea, Samaria, Golan Heights, Gaza Strip. And the whole thing started basically following the Six-Day War. And as always, I do hope that you can see the maps over there. Basically, it shows you the land after the War of Independence, 1949, ended. This map is a very good one to make a very simple statement. Because the State of Israel was founded politically as part of Resolution 181 made by the UN that spoke about two countries between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean, one for the Jews, one for the Arabs. When the war was over, only one country was founded. The other one was not. How come there was no Palestine as a result of this resolution? And we are accused for violating UN resolutions all the time. The most fundamental one, we were the only party to keep. You see, what happened was that land that was allocated to the Palestinian state, like this green area over there, was not conquered by the Israelis. It was not the land that was conquered by us to prevent the existence of their country. This one was conquered by the Arab brothers that seemingly came to help. The Jordanian army came to help and stayed in Judea and Samaria. The Egyptian army came to help and stayed in the Gaza Strip and officially annexed these territories. Occupied territories? Indeed it was. Occupied by Jordan and by Egypt. Nobody was asking the locals, do you want them to stay? They just stayed. Because when you deal with Arab dictatorships, you don't ask the people. You do what the leader wants to do. So there was just one country. There was never a Palestine, although there was supposed to be one according to this resolution. But the reason that Palestine was not born was not an Israeli problem. It was an Arab one. The land was simply conquered by their own brothers and sisters. In 1967, 19 years later, following the Six-Day War, well, here's the new map of the State of Israel. In 6 days, we tripled our land. And this land, of course, is much bigger than this one, needless to say, but we made the major mistake following the war. We simply ignored the fact that with the land that was now liberated, people lived there. Now, who are these people? These are the people that 19 years earlier were supposed to be independent on that piece of land conquered by the Arab countries, crushing their political hopes. Now, suddenly, in a way, they were freed. By whom? By us. And back then, we simply did not realize that these people may have some political aspirations. We thought that if we conquer/liberate Jordanian land, then the people are Jordanians. They don't speak Palestinian, they are Jordanians. If we liberated the Golan Heights, people there are Syrians. They don't have any vague Palestinian ambitions. In a way, we were mistaken. But what happens today begins actually in 1967. The land that was liberated, Judea, Samaria, the Golan Heights, almost immediately after the war, just to show you what was our intention, just to make it more clear, what is the West Bank, all right? This is the area over there west of the River Jordan, Samaria, Judea, and you see it over here, Samaria and Judea, and the Gaza Strip is down south. So what are these territories? Well, let's check the international law, because it says very clearly that a country has a right to protect itself, especially when it is in a danger, to be actually attacked by neighbors. And that was our position, no doubt. So these territories were taken, they are not disputed, occupied, liberated. It doesn't really matter for this talk today. So what are these settlements? Israeli towns and communities which were built in the land that in 1967 was not in Israeli hands. These are the settlements. And who are the settlers? And actually people who live there, but what is their motivation? Why leave the comfortable house in Tel Aviv and go to pioneer a new settlement, a new community in very harsh conditions, sometimes in the midst of very hostile population, taking an enormous risk for the life of your family? Why do that? Well, because of two main reasons. The settlers in this country, in Israel, are divided very clearly to two groups. Now, I do know how settlers are portrayed sometimes in the media. People that have black beards, they wear a kippah, and they carry an Uzi machine gun, and they have Arabs for breakfast. Well, I'm a settler. I like my cereals for breakfast. Because settlers are divided into two main groups. Many of them came as a religious national conviction. Think about the opportunity now. 2,000 years after the exile started, once again, all of the biblical land, well, most of it, is in Jewish hands. What an opportunity. Who can tell us not to go back to Shechem and to Hebron and Bethlehem? After 2,000 years of waiting, longing, praying, finally it's doable. What force in the world can stop us from doing that? The other half are people that came because the government was offering benefits. The government policy said, not in the beginning, but after about 10 years, that if you move to such a settlement, then housing is sometimes even free. We'll create jobs for you. We'll give you lots of benefits. We need people to go and live in the territories. It was a political need. It was a religious need. So two main groups. And a group that speaks in a very militant way about not leaving, no matter what, are obviously those who are the religious, not ultra-Orthodox, as Jacob yesterday tried to kind of categorize or explain the different levels of observance in Israel, but those who have national Zionist convictions as well, because the ultra-Orthodox don't. So these are the people who live in the territories: Judea, Samaria, Gaza. So what are they? Occupied? Definitely not, because speaking about occupation, it's only if the land was taken from a sovereign state. It was not. It didn't belong officially to Jordan and not to Egypt, occupied by them. This was not an independent land prior to that. I'm just telling you what the international law says. The land basically belonged to nobody, was now taken by Israel. So it's not occupied by any definition, except for the media, by the way. Actually, what followed, and I want to skip this one with your permission, to speak about what followed the Six-Day War. Amazing. 12 days after the war was over, 9 days, I'm sorry. An Israeli prime minister, I'll tell you what it says over there because you can hardly see. Levi Eshkol, in the parliament, in the Knesset, June 19th of 1967, says very clearly, Israel is willing to withdraw. If we can be guaranteed peace from the neighboring Arab countries, nobody mentioned Palestinians, they did not exist back then, Israel is willing to pull out of all the land and give it to the Arab countries for peace, except for East Jerusalem. That was the offer. Isn't it generous? Long before people thought about settling the land. The answer was given by the Arab Convention in Sudan, Khartoum, 1st of September 1967, the three famous no's. No peace, no recognition, no negotiation. What was taken by force will be returned by force and by a bloodbath. That was the answer. So even if we wanted to give the land to the Arab countries back for peace, there was nobody to take it. And that started the opportunity, since nobody wants the land back in a peaceful way, that may last forever. So let's start to think, what are we doing? But even the territories are divided to different places and different levels of significance to the strategy, so to speak, of the State of Israel. UN Resolution 242, as we said yesterday as well, it speaks about the right of countries to exist peacefully in the Middle East. I don't remember the Palestinians being a country. When this resolution was made, November 22nd of 1967, there were no Palestinians yet. In a way, we have invented them. How ironic. Move on to the next slide and try to explain a few things about the different places. Golan Heights are up on top. Biblical Beishan is over there. When you see these blue kind of circles, these are the big concentration of Palestinian population, like in Samaria, in Judea, and in Gaza. But speaking about settlements, the Golan is also included because it was a land that was part of Syria until 1967. The Golan, of course, has its own significance, which is basically a strategical one. But right after the war, we did something that's kind of contradicting what I said so far about wanting to give the land back. Some things we didn't mean to give back. You see, until 1936, there was a very thriving Jewish community that lived in Hebron. In the massacre of 1936, a Jewish existence that goes back to the times of King David was stopped. And tens of people were murdered by the Arab neighbors in Hebron, and property was taken. 30 years later, 1967, we didn't ask permission from nobody. People still lived, their parents were massacred by these Arabs. So the Jewish community in Hebron started almost right away. There was a place, the Etzion block, which was also Jewish property, purchased with lots of money, right here. Destroyed in 1948. Only 19 years later, we didn't hesitate to take the land back because it was ours, we paid for it. Taken by the Arabs, taken by us now. So in few places that were purchased by pioneers earlier for money, we sent people back without any negotiations, any discussions, absolutely nothing. So from the very beginning, it was clear that we are going to stay in some places, although an offer was made that we are willing to give the land back, not all of it. By the way, 242, the famous resolution says, Israel should withdraw from territories, not the territories. And we said one word, so significant. How interesting. The French version of this resolution says the territories. It was given in English, but the UN is publishing documents in few languages. So the Arabs go with the French version. We go with the English one. Obviously, it's more comfortable. Let's focus in or zoom in the Golan Heights. Start over there. The Golan Heights is a very small area on the northern eastern corner of the state of Israel, which borders with Syria on this side and slightly with Lebanon on the northern side. There was no question about the significance of the Golan Heights. And since nobody took the offer of our withdrawal for peace, the government initiated a massive scale of settlements and settling in the Golan Heights, to such an extent that a special law was made in the parliament. 1981, that the Golan Heights are officially part of the state of Israel. And why is that so important? Well, because of a few obvious reasons, and those of you that were in Israel, I don't need to even repeat that. Well, number one, we speak about an area which is overlooking and commanding and dominating all the Israeli towns along the foot of the Golan Heights. You know what a feeling it is to live in a bomb shelter for 19 years because above your head, a Syrian sniper can open fire at his will 24 hours a day. That was the case. So finally, having the heights in our hands, nobody seriously considered to give these away. But this was not the main reason. The main reason was water, basically. Water is life in this region. And two sources from the river Jordan, which is a source of life to the whole nation, feeding the Sea of Galilee, came from Syria, one from Lebanon. So having the Golan Heights is protecting our water sources and also holding the high grounds. So there was no debate about that. However, you need to understand that two Israeli prime ministers made a commitment officially that if the Syrians are willing to accomplish genuine peace, whatever that is, we will pull out from the Golan Heights. And you have to say, are you out of your mind? What, are you nuts? Well, sometimes it really looks like. But I did mention yesterday the desire for peace and how enormous chances we are willing to take. So the Golan officially was on the negotiation table. Fortunately, it was a dead end. But the mindset is ready, because once it was brought up, it will be, if such negotiation will be resumed, on the table already. So speaking about the Golan Heights, there is a consensus in Israel right now. But if you are a settler over there, you have some hard time, because what is your future? Do you know that they stopped burying people in cemeteries in the Golan Heights? Because the last thing a Jew would do is to move the bones of a dead body in case of we are pulling out to another cemetery. It's a bad sign, because it tells you that you may not stay there for too long. Although right now, nothing happens. It's very quiet. Only recently, Assad said, loud and clear, he is willing to resume the negotiations. We said, whoa, just a minute. First, you close the headquarters of Hezbollah and all the others in Syria. And then you stop promoting terror. And then we'll see what happens. We are not in a hurry. We don't have a problem with the American boots in Iraq. You have a problem with that. So now we can take the time. Golan Heights, it's not the issue on the table right now. Jerusalem, another key issue. I did mention yesterday that the new metropolitan area of Jerusalem was a decision made by the government right after 1967. This was the city until then. So it is twice as big today as it used to be 36 years ago. People that live on the new sections of Jerusalem are technically settlers. They live behind the Green Line, which was the border until 1967. About 200,000 people. So speaking about the various solutions for the future, I did mention it yesterday that there are some discussions about dividing Jerusalem into two. But you can debate the issue, but even those who are keeping a religious Jewish perspective would say, listen, this is a political decision. This is not part of what we consider as the holy city of Jerusalem. So they're kind of distinguishing between the whole land and between Jerusalem as a focal point. Many others will say, listen, this is all, it's not a question of if and how much. The land is ours. And it's not our permission to give it away. And these are the two opinions. And this is the struggle in the land. So Jerusalem, which has all these areas, is also considered to be technically occupied territory. People spoke, some of the speakers, which I don't recall the names exactly, did mention that the UN said that Jerusalem is an international city. Well, Resolution 181, the one that led, in a way, to the founding of the State of Israel, said that Jerusalem will be an international city. No way. There is no State of Israel without Jerusalem in its very heart. We simply cannot exist besides that. It just won't work. So Jerusalem, and the map is over there, once again, all these new areas, and the same number of Jews live in the, I can't say the old part of Jerusalem, but prior to 1967 part, as well as here. So when you speak about a future solution, well, they did speak about that all these people have to go back home. Let me tell you a secret. When we offer the Palestinians in Jerusalem, and sometimes we do, not officially, that they can join Arafat's state, they say, you must be out of your mind. We don't want to live there. It's not a democracy. We understand the benefits of living in a Jewish city. Social security, jobs, freedom. You don't find that in the Palestinian autonomy. So even Palestinians, not officially, because if they say that officially, they probably will end up with a bullet in their head. Let's carry on. Settlements around Jerusalem. Well, you do see the blue circle. Happens to be my hometown. Isn't that nice? Anyhow, this is my neighborhood. My neighborhood is over there. Anyhow, so this will be the metro area of Jerusalem. It was a crazy race from the very beginning, because we understood that when the time will come to discuss the issue, anybody that will have a massive majority of people in a specific area will have this area. So the Israeli government's policy was to encourage Jews to come in large numbers and to live around Jerusalem, more than in to live around Jerusalem. So you do see the blue circles, all of them representing big Jewish towns and neighborhoods around Jerusalem, just in order to make sure that we have the overwhelming majority over there. The problem is that the Arab families are growing real fast. It's not uncommon to find 10, 15, 20 children in a family. Our average is 2.7, always wondered about the 0.7. But you understand that we are being outnumbered gradually. So there's a massive effort to encourage more people to come, to create such a local majority. Because when the time will come, if such a time ever comes, God forbid, but it may happen, we have to face it, it may happen. Then what will happen, basically, for the time being? Wherever people live, that's where the borders will go. They build a security fence today. I can see it from my window every day. It's a big concrete wall in some parts, and it is dividing the city already. They don't make a big issue out of it. But Jerusalem is divided. And the line is somewhere not as it was in 1967. But some parts of Jerusalem today are not in Israeli hands anymore. You won't hear it loud and clear, because there was a debate about the security fence. I'll speak about it the very last slide. Judea and Samaria, well, obviously, that's where the focal point is, because this is the land that we are negotiating with the Palestinians. Golan Heights, not a problem. Not yet, at least. Well, the government did not give permission to live in the territories because we were hoping until 1977 that we can still negotiate with the Arab countries about the land. In 1977, when the Likud party, the right-wing party, won the elections, it was a turning point. Because their conviction was more nationalistic. We have the right to live everywhere. The gates are open, and large scale of settling started in the territories. Judea, Samaria, mainly. So that was the turning point of 1977. It was lots of pressure by different parties, by different Jewish groups, even around the world. And money was sent over for that purpose. So today we have quite a few. You see the little dots over there. These are all Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria. I mentioned Hebron earlier. I mentioned the Etzion block. You see where they are located. And also the eastern line of defense, as it is mentioned over there, was settled almost right away. Because you see, before we had peace with the Jordanians, this border was a big problem because Iraq is here, Iran is here, and all the others are over there, that's Japan. But what I mean is that we had to make sure that we have kind of a buffer between the big Palestinian towns And our town's here, you know how far it is from the old border to the Mediterranean? What is the narrowest place in the state of Israel? 9.5 miles, that's it. Who can survive under such conditions when all around you are surrounded by hate? So that was also something that happened right away, to have a line of defense here, army bases, but also communities, to have a buffer zone between anybody who may come from the east and the centers of the state of Israel. 1979, it started basically the peace accord with Egypt. Listen, Sadat came to Jerusalem, the president of Egypt. It was November 19th of 1977, went to the Knesset and gave a very hardline speech. He said, listen, I'm offering peace, but I want every square inch of Arab land back, all of it, for peace. And the most hardliner of any Israeli prime minister ever, Sharon included, Menachem Begin, said, fine, we are pulling out of Sinai, but please, take Gaza with you. You spoke about every square inch. Gaza was Egyptian. So I said, oh, no. You stick with Gaza. We don't want Gaza back. Gaza is a hornet nest. It's trouble. You keep Gaza. So when we pulled out of Sinai for peace, we also dismantled and destroyed Israeli communities that existed there. About 10,000 people altogether, down in Sharm el-Sheikh and the beautiful beaches of Sinai, and up here by the Arab town of El Arish, the Egyptian town of El Arish. We pulled out from Sinai, and we took with us all the Israelis that lived over there. And in the framework of the Camp David agreements, for the first time ever, leaders of the Middle East had discussed the issue of Palestinians. You see, until 1978, nobody in the Arab world gave any recognition to any Palestinians to be a nation or national rights. Until 1988, the Jordanians, the West Bank Jordanians, only then they said, okay, we don't have any demands anymore, these are Palestinians. Until then, no way, they are Jordanians. The land is Jordanian, 1988. You see, our problem is today, when you try to overview the situation, is that you're standing where you are today, knowing what you know, and you try to explain things that happened before all that happened. We need to view things as if we are now in 1978, not in 2004. In 1978, Begin told Sadat, with the smiling face of Jimmy Carter over there, sure, they'll have an autonomy. Israel is willing to give the Palestinians full autonomy. Judea, Samaria, Gaza. And the offer was brought to the Palestinians and was turned down. When this offer was made, that was the number of settlers in all of the area, 5,000. Today it's over 220,000. That was one of the mistakes, so to speak, they did. I have to add, fortunately. But they made a mistake, the Palestinians, back then. Well, here's the new map now. Once again, we pulled out. Gaza is now in our hands because the Egyptians didn't want it back. King Hussein of Jordan said in 1988, this is not my land. Never was. My grandfather, Abdullah, annexed it in January of 1950. I have no demands anymore. You take it. So finally, we are now debating with people that were not people, but since the Arabs gave the recognition after we did, we are debating over a very small piece of land. In the Gaza Strip, things are relatively quiet, speaking about daily events, simply because there was a fence. Fence that goes around Gaza, and as I said yesterday, not a single attack, not even one, came out from Gaza. The fence is effective. It's working very well. Oh yes, there was one. One was with two Palestinians carrying British passports that went through security, but they were caught before they successfully, or God forbid, had launched their attack in Tel Aviv. But besides that, it's working very well. In Gaza, the population of settlers is about 5,000 people that live in few communities, but in Gaza, these are farmers. Most of the other communities, people are not farmers. People commute to work every day in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. In the case of Gaza, they're producing the most great products in the world. You go to a greenhouse in Gaza and you see how we grow tomatoes today. Not on the ground anymore. You don't have to have the ground. If you have the knowledge and the right fertilizers, determination, and money, you build a greenhouse and you pull this tomato bush from the bottom to the top, you tie it to the roof, and tomatoes growing like that. And one bush can produce 20 to 25 times more than a normal tomato bush. and you have picking seasons all year round. We are supplying Europe with vegetables, and many of these are coming from this little area over there, the Gaza Strip. However, 1.8 million Palestinians live in this area and 5,000 Jews. Now, do you understand the problem? If you have a town called Netzarim, which is over there, 60 Jewish families, it takes an army brigade to protect them. It's a burden in a way. However, as long as these settlements, communities were sent by the government, it's our obligation. It's a burden maybe, but it's a blessing as well. So the Gaza situation is a bit more clear to understand maybe than in Judea and Samaria, which is more complicated. Situation today, about 120 settlements. I have to add legal settlements, and you'll hear my point in a minute. These people live all around Judea and Samaria. In Jerusalem, for example, you do have about 230,000 people that are citizens of Jerusalem, obviously, but technically they live in neighborhoods behind the green line, so they are included in these numbers. By the way, who keeps track of the numbers? Not Israel. America does all the time. They keep telling us how many people live in the settlements. Because speaking about pressure, speaking about a solution, they are keeping track. Every new settlement, new community, we sometimes are getting a notice from the satellites, Americans. Hey, they built a settlement over there. You go and see what's going on. So somebody's keeping track, not us, all right? We speak about, I guess, CIA. I'm not sure who's in charge of doing that. But somebody is counting every settler and every man who goes to live in the territories. Some of these were actually built without a government decision. And this is a problem for us today, because we are not only a democracy, but things need to be done in the right way. But sometimes, if you think that you live in a community and you want to move to the next hill, you pitch a tent, first of all. And after a few weeks, you bring the family to live in. And then you bring some dogs, and hey, it's a settlement. The problem is that each settlement has to have electricity and sewage and a road and protection. So we prefer to do that in a master plan of the government, how to inhabit the territories, and not kind of a private initiative as it is right now. But you see, the message that was given to these guys, me included, was very confusing sometimes. Whenever there seemed to be a breakthrough in the talk, so to speak, towards some kind of a solution, elements in the government, we tell the leaders of the settlers, guys, it's coming, don't accept it, you go and start building on the hills. The Israeli government was working against the Israeli government. Interestingly enough, look how ironic. The man who was behind that always to keep building in large numbers without listening to the government on every hilltop was Ariel Sharon. And he is the one now that has to deal, maybe in the future, with the opposite. But you know what? Sharon was the one that destroyed all the settlements in Sinai, when we pulled out of Sinai. Begin was prime minister, but it was Sharon's job, in his position then, to execute the plan. So the settlers are quite suspicious. What are Sharon's intentions? He appears as a very hardliner, I agree. But in his history, he was in charge once of evacuating, clearing a large area from Jewish settlers in Sinai in 1979 to 1982. So the situation today, as you can read the data over there, is, or the problem today is this, legalizing these settlements. Well, how such an illegal settlement begins, and I have to focus on that because today the world doesn't have a problem with settlements. You need to understand that. We are taking the heat because of illegal settlements. Nobody is accusing Israel, speaking about the Western world, not even America, for building settlements. The problem is with the illegal ones. And it's our problem as well. Because if you decide to build such a settlement, as I said, infrastructure, protection, it is becoming a problem, more so because people say, listen, the government is not in control. They cannot tell us what to do. It's not in their hands. This is really shaking the foundations of the nation in a way. Because this is the main debate in Israel today. The people are split into two, not over Jerusalem, over this. Because this is so personal. It's my house. That's where I raised my kids. All of my education, my whole life I lived here. To live now? Why? What do we get in return? Not very clear. We have no idea. In fact, we know because we've been there. So it is a painful issue. You need to understand the emotions involved in it. Well, let's speak about that for a minute. There are people that are for it, people that are against it. Basically, we have to guarantee these people's safety. It's easy to do if you have blocks of communities. But if these are dispersed on the mountains, although there is a need to do that sometimes, it's just too much of a pressure on the Israeli army. There's a limit of what we can recruit on a regular basis to protect these guys, and they are an easy target. When I go home from Jerusalem every day, you know, it's very quiet recently, but hasn't been always like that, you're a bit concerned. Because we lost over 1,000 people in the last 4 years. About 300 of these were simply gunned and shot on roads in Judea and Samaria, driving home or to work. They are an easy target. More so now when the fence is being built. The fence is going to keep all these terrorists out of Israel proper, quote unquote. And if they're still looking for easy targets, there is an easy target. The settlements and the settlers. So many people would agree that this is a real strategic, I would say it even crucial to have them over there. Because if you have Jewish presence in the midst of the Palestinian towns, you're guaranteeing safety because maybe they will attack you, but they won't come after the big centers in Israel. So you are there to take the heat, and they know that, and they are willing to do that. We are willing to do that. We know the price that we may need to pay. But hey, when was it easy to be a Jew or an Israeli? Never. And I'm willing to pay the price as a free man in my country, something that my grandfather didn't have the privilege to do. He was slaughtered in the Holocaust, in a foreign land, not back home. Is there a price to pay? Yes. We'll pay it gladly. Because finally we can protect ourselves. We don't need any favors. We know how to do that. The problem is within us, how we view ourselves and how we are solving the issues within the Israeli public. Let me tell you something. Politicians may care about what America says and France. The ordinary people don't care about that. We just want to live our lives. And we'll do whatever it takes to stay there as free people. This is so simple. Do I need to understand, to explain that? What can be more trivial than that? Those who are not that much for the settlements, basically, and they think that maybe there will be a land for peace solution, they say that the settlements are not a blessing, but exactly the opposite. So listen, this is the main problem. No, it's not. You know what? In the Oslo Accords, settlements are not mentioned. Isn't that interesting? If this is such a painful issue for the Palestinians, as they say today, the most painful problem, it's our land, the Jews stole it. You signed an agreement that says absolutely nothing about settlements. What went wrong now? Suddenly, it's a main issue. Well, there are many main issues, but this is one of them. Any agreement that we sign with the Palestinians is not mentioning settlements. Well, one does. The last one in Taba, which was kind of half official. Now, it's the biggest problem all of a sudden. From their perspective, they're right, it's land. They say it's their land. The way they see that, we take it. And with 1 million Russians coming in over the last decade, many of these people went to live in the territories, in these communities. Let's get to almost the very end of it. And I know that you can't really read what's going on, but I do need to explain that as well. Speaking about the illegal settlements, once again, internationally speaking, that's what people want from us to do now, to dismantle these. Are we capable of doing that? I'm telling you, not without bloodshed. And the world is always kind of encouraged because one community was dismantled. You know what we are dismantling? We are moving an empty, who knows, kind of a building from one hill to the other. All right? And whenever people are involved, we are recruiting 10,000 people to go there to stop the army from moving people out of their homes. We do that. And since we are taking so much pressure from the world, it will end, unfortunately, not without bloodshed. Simply because too many voices are heard recently that we should resist. And even if it means opening fire on Israeli soldiers, Jews will do that. I was involved in one of these a few years ago, which was horrible. We tried very much not to, I'm a settler myself, But, you know, I'm a soldier as well. And when the order was given, I kind of swallowed my pride and I'm taking orders. But we try very much not to get one brother against the other. Because technically, if you serve in a battalion that got an order to go and evacuate a settlement and your brother lives there, how can you be in such a situation? It's almost impossible. So viewing that from here, I think that you don't get a picture, what we are going through. So if I'm bringing in some local flavor, well, I'm glad to do that. But you need to understand how emotional and how complicated things are. We are not concerned that much about us and the Palestinians. We are concerned about us and how things are working within the Israeli society. And as I said, the temple was destroyed, and in the process, brothers turned against brothers. So we have the experience. This country went through a horrible civil war as well. You know that. The horribles that it can never get. Well, let's get to the bottom line. Say one word about the security fence, if I may, because it is definitely connected. I have another 4 minutes. Security fence, you heard about it, right? Did you? No, you didn't. You heard about a wall, right? Don't they speak about a wall? Well, when I'm watching CNN, they speak about a wall. Fence, see? Fence, fence, fence. That's a security fence. True, it has some sections of concrete wall. Because whenever you build that in a build-up area, you don't want anybody to shoot through the fence. So 5% of it will be about 500 miles long, will be a concrete wall. It's a security fence. That means we can move that, but it's not the point. The point is that the minute you build the fence, some people are staying on the other side of the fence. Now think about a settler as I am, or many like me. What is the message that we are getting? Well, here's the line. I know it's not a very good map. The black sections are already built, all right? Over there. The red sections will be built, hopefully by the end of 2004. I happen to live here. In my case, it's easier because my town is part of Jerusalem's metro area, so I'm included. But most of my brothers are on the other side. What kind of a message it gives to people that live on the other side? You know, it's your problem now. You're not guarding you anymore. You're left behind. What kind of a message is that for a country to deliver to people that were sent by the country to live all around Israel? So once again, the problem is not the International Court in Hague and what these people say, that people say. The problem is within us. It's creating a rift. It's creating a bridge that I don't know how we can get it over with. In Sinai, it was relatively easy. 5,000 people, they moved back, they got new homes. It was a tragedy for them. It was not a national catastrophe. But here we speak about 500,000 people, Jerusalem included. That's 10% of the whole nation. How do you deal with that? Well, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm just here to try to present the facts without even making too many opinions, because who am I to make an opinion? Nobody's listening anyhow. I can talk and talk, but nobody's listening to me. And I gave up a political career long ago. I'm just here to try to present the issue, to present the problems. And I will dare to think that some of that you don't get from the local media. And let's face it, most of us, I don't want to say lazy, it's a bad word. We are all busy with our lives. Who will go to make his own research to find out what is really happening over there? It's natural. You come home after a day of work, you only want to get, you know, just the titles, and that's it. And you make an opinion. That's fine. But you need to hear that. And you need to hear that mostly because you're friends of Israel. And you need to know how it works. And as I said yesterday, I only wished that you could hear your voices louder over there. How can you do that? I don't know. Pastor John has some great ideas. I'm sure that he will be glad to share it with you. Thank you so much. Just a minute, the rose. We need to bring in the rose.
Well, I know more. That's great. Really great. I'm going to bring Roger Oakland, but you want to get up and take a stretch. You know, Ronnie has a table out here, and at his table, he has a CD that he has personally gone around Israel. I mean, this is a beauty. And taken, I don't know how many pictures on that CD. Huh? 200 pictures of Israel all over, every place. The waterfalls, the country, Jerusalem, the old city, the new city. Just fascinating pictures. He has them for sale out there. Fascinating, wonderful pictures. And they're really, really clear, like 3 megapixel, 3.5 megapixel pictures. So they're great. So if you want to get them from Ronny at next break, not now, next break, why don't we all stand up and stretch, and we'll do some exercise. Ready? Here you go. Up. Now we get David up here. Ready?